A stranger kept texting me romantic messages, making me look unfaithful. My husband confronted me, fury in his eyes. I was shocked until I traced the number. But when I found out who had really sent them, my blood ran cold. It was all a trap, to get me divorced and destroy me. My phone buzzed against the lacquered conference table, drawing curious glances from my colleagues. I flipped it over, expecting a message from Jack about dinner plans. Instead, an unknown number glowed on my screen with words that made my stomach drop. I can't stop thinking about the way you smiled at me yesterday. You're even more beautiful when you're focused on your work. I quickly turned my phone face down, heat rushing to my cheeks. The quarterly report discussion continued around me, but my mind raced. Who would send something like this? I didn't recognize the number, and I certainly hadn't given anyone reason to think I was interested in them romantically. Emma? Your thoughts on the Q3 projections? My boss's voice snapped me back to the boardroom. I cleared my throat. The numbers are promising. If we push the new product line by early August instead of September, we could see a 15% increase in revenue. I spoke with confidence, years of business expertise automatically taking over while my personal concerns receded to the background. After the meeting, I stepped into my office and closed the door. Taking a deep breath, I checked my phone again. 3 more messages had arrived. I love watching you take command in meetings. Such confidence. That blue dress brings out your eyes perfectly. When will you finally notice me? My hands trembled slightly as I typed a response. I think you have the wrong number. The reply came instantly. No mistake, Emma. I know exactly who I'm texting. A chill ran through me. I blocked the number immediately, tucking my phone away as my assistant knocked with documents requiring my signature. I forced a smile and focused on work, but unease lingered like a shadow at the edge of my consciousness. That evening as I drove home, my mind replayed the messages. How did this person know what I was wearing? Had they been watching me? The thought made me grip the steering wheel tighter as I pulled into the driveway of the home Jack and I had purchased 3 years ago. A beautiful colonial with a wraparound porch that had stolen my heart instantly. Jack greeted me with a kiss, the familiar scent of his cologne momentarily dispelling my anxiety. We moved through our evening routine, cooking together, sharing details about our day, settling on the couch with glasses of wine. I considered telling him about the messages but hesitated. Why worry him over what was probably just someone's misguided attempt at flirtation? Everything okay? Jack asked, noticing my distraction as I stared into my wine glass. Just work stress, I lied, hating how easily the deception slipped out. In our 5 years of marriage, we'd built a foundation of honesty. Yet something held me back, perhaps the fear of seeing suspicion in his eyes, or worse, dismissal of my concerns. The next morning brought fresh messages from a different number. Did you think blocking me would be that easy? You looked peaceful sleeping last night. Jack doesn't appreciate what he has. My blood ran cold. I nearly dropped my coffee mug, splashing hot liquid onto my blouse. This person had been outside our house? Had watched us sleeping? My hands shook as I texted back. Stop contacting me immediately or I'll report this to the police. They won't believe you, Emma. No one will. I blocked this number too, then immediately called our security company to check the alarm system and scheduled an appointment to install additional cameras. At work, I found myself constantly glancing over my shoulder, scrutinizing every colleague who smiled at me. Was it the new account manager who always lingered too long at my office door? Or maybe Brandon from IT who had helped with my computer last week? 3 days passed with blessed silence. I began to relax, convincing myself it had been a prank or a case of mistaken identity after all. Then, while presenting at a client meeting downtown, my phone lit up with a message from yet another unknown number. You're stunning when you're passionate about your work. The way you're gesturing right now. I can't look away. My voice faltered mid-sentence. I scanned the conference room, meeting the confused expressions of my clients. There were 20 people present, all familiar faces except for 2 representatives from the client's parent company. Neither was looking at their phone. Excuse me, I said, forcing professionalism into my voice. Let's take a 5-minute break. In the privacy of the hallway, I called Jack. They're watching me, I whispered, fear finally overwhelming my desire to handle this alone. Someone keeps sending me messages. They know where I am, what I'm wearing. They were outside our house, Jack. What? Who? The concern in his voice was immediate. Have you called the police? Not yet. I don't even know who to report. My voice cracked. I've blocked 3 different numbers already. Come home, he said firmly. We'll figure this out together. I ended the client meeting early, citing a family emergency. As I hurried to my car, another message arrived. Running home to Jack won't save you. He won't believe you for long. I froze in the parking garage, suddenly aware of how isolated I was. Footsteps echoed somewhere nearby. Was someone watching me even now? I quickened my pace, nearly running to my car. Once inside, I locked the doors immediately, hands shaking so badly I struggled to insert the key. At home, Jack listened intently as I showed him the messages, relieved to finally share the burden. He insisted we file a police report, though the officer who took our statement seemed skeptical. Unfortunately, these types of messages are difficult to trace, she explained. Unless there's a direct threat, there's not much we can do besides documenting the harassment. That night, I lay awake beside Jack, staring at the ceiling. Why me? What had I done to deserve this? My company had competitors certainly, but this felt intensely personal. The messages continued over the next week. Always from new numbers, always just detailed enough to prove the sender was watching me. I changed my routine, varied my commute, avoided windows. Nothing helped. Whoever this was, they were always one step ahead, as if they had intimate knowledge of my life. And with each passing day, the messages grew more possessive, more disturbing. We belong together, Emma. Jack is temporary. I am forever. I dream of the day you'll finally understand we're meant to be. Everything I do is for us. You will see. I began to feel like a prisoner in my own life, constantly looking over my shoulder, questioning every interaction. The strong, confident businesswoman I'd always been was eroding under the constant strain of invisible eyes tracking my every move. Little did I know these messages were just the beginning of a nightmare that would threaten everything I held dear. For 2 weeks, Jack remained my rock. He installed security cameras around our property, helped me file police reports that went nowhere, and held me when nightmares jolted me awake. But as the messages continued without any leads, I noticed a subtle shift in his demeanor. The way his gaze lingered on my phone when it chimed, how he'd pause outside my home office when I took calls. I was preparing dinner on a Friday evening when Jack arrived home earlier than expected. His usual warm greeting was absent. Instead, he stood in the kitchen doorway, his posture rigid, face ashen. "Who's David?" he asked, his voice unnervingly quiet. I turned from the cutting board, knife still in hand. "David? I don't know any David." "Really?" Jack pulled out his phone. "Then why is he texting you that he misses the scent of your perfume on his sheets?" My stomach plummeted. "What are you talking about?" "I saw the messages, Emma. They came through while your phone was charging in our bedroom." His voice cracked slightly. "I wasn't snooping, they just appeared on your screen." I wiped my hands and moved toward him. "Jack, that must be the same person who's been harassing me. There is no David." He stepped back as if my proximity might burn him. "These weren't harassment, Emma. These were responses. Replies to messages you've apparently deleted." His eyes, usually warm with affection, had hardened into something I barely recognized. "There's an entire conversation thread." "Let me see," I demanded, reaching for his phone. He showed me the screen. Indeed, there were messages that appeared to be from me to this David person, interwoven with romantic responses. My blood ran cold as I read words I'd never written. "Miss you already. Jack's working late again. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about it. We need to be more careful. Jack's getting suspicious." "I never wrote these," I whispered, scrolling through the messages in horror. "Jack, you have to believe me. Someone is setting me up." "Setting you up?" He laughed, a hollow sound that echoed against the kitchen tiles. "With detailed information about my schedule? About that weekend I went to visit my brother? These messages go back months, Emma." My mind raced. How was this possible? I reached for my own phone, but the alleged conversation with David wasn't there. Somehow, these messages had been sent from my number without appearing on my device. "I'm being hacked or something," I insisted. "The stalker messages, now this, it's all connected. Someone's trying to hurt us. The only one hurting us is you." Jack's voice rose sharply. He rarely raised his voice, the sound made me flinch. "I've been supporting you through this supposed stalker situation, and all along you've been..." He couldn't finish the sentence. It's not true, I pleaded. There is no affair. There is no David. I love you. Only you. Jack paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. I defended you to everyone. My mother called weeks ago saying she'd seen you having lunch with some man at Riverside Cafe. I told her she must be mistaken. My head snapped up. What? When did she say this happened? What does it matter? February something. The point is I trusted you. I grabbed his arm. Jack, I was in Chicago that entire week for the Anderson account. Remember? You dropped me at the airport. A flicker of doubt crossed his face, but it vanished quickly. Then it was another time. She saw what she saw. Your mother has never liked me, I said quietly. You know that. His expression darkened. Don't try to deflect this onto my mother. We argued until midnight. Every explanation I offered was met with skepticism. The more I insisted on my innocence, the more Jack seemed convinced of my guilt. When he finally grabbed a pillow and stormed off to the guest room, I collapsed onto our bed, exhausted and scared. Sleep eluded me. Around 3 a.m. I heard the front door open and close. Through the window I watched Jack's car pull out of the driveway. My attempts to call him went straight to voicemail. The next morning he returned with red-rimmed eyes and the faint smell of whiskey. I stayed at Trevor's, he said flatly, referring to his college roommate who lived across town. Jack, please, we need to figure this out. Together. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. I've been thinking all night. These harassment messages conveniently started when I began questioning why you've been working late so often. His tone was clinical, detached. It's a pretty elaborate cover for an affair, I'll give you that. The accusation stung like a physical blow. You think I invented a stalker to hide infidelity? Do you hear how absurd that sounds? More absurd than someone hacking your phone to frame you? Creating fake messages that somehow know intimate details about our lives. He shook his head. I checked our phone records this morning. There have been dozens of calls to the same number over the past few months. Always when I'm not home. My jaw dropped. That's impossible. Let me see. He handed me a printout from our mobile carrier. There they were, calls I had never made, listed in black and white. I want to believe you, Emma, Jack said, his voice breaking slightly. But the evidence, it's overwhelming. That afternoon he packed a small suitcase. I need space to think, he said. I'll be at Trevor's for a while. I stood in the doorway, tears streaming down my face. Don't leave. Please. If you leave, whoever is doing this wins. He paused, conflict written across his features. For a moment I thought he might stay. Then his phone chimed with a text alert. He checked it, his expression hardening again. Goodbye, Emma. After Jack left, I received another message from the unknown number. He never deserved you anyway. Now you're free to be with me. Rage replaced my despair. Someone had methodically destroyed my marriage, creating an elaborate web of lies. They had access to our personal information, our schedules, possibly even our home. This wasn't random harassment. It was targeted and deliberate. I wiped my tears and made a decision. If the police wouldn't help me, I'd uncover the truth myself. I would find out who was behind this, clear my name, and fight for my marriage, no matter what it took. The house felt cavernous without Jack. Each creak and settling noise amplified in the silence, making sleep impossible. I spent that first night alone, methodically documenting everything. Every message, every call, every strange occurrence over the past weeks. The pattern was too deliberate to be random. Someone with intimate knowledge of my life was systematically destroying it. By morning I had a wall of sticky notes and a renewed sense of purpose. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years and set up camp at my dining room table with my laptop and a pot of coffee strong enough to strip paint. First, I needed technical help. My colleague Priya had mentioned her brother worked in cybersecurity. One desperate call later, Raj was sitting across from me, examining my phone. This is sophisticated work, he muttered, scrolling through diagnostic screens I couldn't begin to understand. Someone's installed spyware, high-end stuff, not the garbage you find on sketchy websites. My skin crawled. They can see everything I do? Messages, calls, emails, photos, even your location. He glanced up sympathetically. Do you have any enemies with technical skills and money to burn? I thought about my career trajectory, the deals I'd closed, the people I'd outmaneuvered. More than I'd like to admit. Raj worked silently for hours, tracing digital breadcrumbs. Finally, he pushed back from the table. I've isolated several IP addresses connecting to your device. One keeps appearing. It's routing through multiple VPNs, but there's a pattern. He handed me a piece of paper with a string of numbers. This might help identify them. I stared at the meaningless digits. How? The phone registering these connections is purchased through Vermilion Enterprises. He paused. Does that name mean anything to you? My coffee mug nearly slipped from my fingers. Vermilion was Marcus Hargrove's holding company. We were partners in a startup 5 years ago. Memories flooded back. Marcus's brilliance, his intensity, his inappropriate comments that I'd brushed off as social awkwardness. When our venture gained traction, his behavior became more possessive. I eventually bought out his share to escape the increasingly uncomfortable dynamic. I need to confirm it's him, I said, already reaching for my keys. Whoa, slow down. Raj blocked my path. This person has already manipulated your husband into leaving. If they realize you're onto them, they might escalate. What choice do I have? I demanded. The police won't help without concrete evidence. Raj sighed. Give me until tomorrow. I can set up a digital trap. Something that will ping us his exact location next time he accesses your phone. That night, another message arrived. Asterisk, how's the empty house, Emma? Jack's better off without your lies. I'm the only one who truly understands you, asterisk. I forced myself to respond naturally, my skin crawling with each word. Please leave me alone. I don't know who you are. The reply came immediately. You know exactly who I am. We're meant to be together. Got him, Raj announced the next morning, bursting through my front door with his laptop. He accessed your phone at 11:43 p.m. from a location in Highland Park. I pulled up property records on my laptop. Sure enough, Marcus owned a house in Highland Park. A modern monstrosity featured in an architectural magazine last year. I need to see him, I said, already planning my approach. That's a terrible idea, Raj countered. Let me gather more evidence first. But patience had never been my virtue. 2 hours later, I parked a block from Marcus's house, heart hammering against my ribs. Through binoculars borrowed from Jack's hiking gear, I watched the property. The security setup was extensive. Cameras at every corner, coded gate entry. Just as I was considering my next move, a sleek black car pulled into the driveway. The gate slid open and I caught a glimpse of the driver. Marcus, barely changed from when I'd last seen him 5 years ago. Still meticulously groomed, still radiating cold intensity. I snapped several photos with my phone, then followed at a distance when he left again an hour later. He drove to an upscale shopping district and entered an electronics store. I waited 15 minutes before following. He was examining smartphones when I approached. Hello, Marcus. His head snapped up, surprise flickering across his features before smoothing into a practiced smile. Emma. What a delightful coincidence. Not a coincidence, I said flatly. I know what you've been doing. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A coldness that sent chills down my spine. I'm afraid I don't know what you mean. The messages. The spyware on my phone. Destroying my marriage. I kept my voice low, conscious of other shoppers nearby. Marcus laughed, the sound utterly devoid of humor. That's quite an accusation. Perhaps the stress of your failing marriage is affecting your judgment. Vermilion Enterprises, I said, watching his reaction carefully. That's how we trace the phone you're using to spy on me. A muscle twitched in his jaw, the only indication I'd struck a nerve. You always were clever, Emma. It's one of the things I've always admired about you. Why? I demanded. What could possibly make you do this? His smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. You ruined me, he said, voice barely above a whisper. You took our company, our vision, and pushed me out. Everything you've achieved should have been ours. I bought your shares at market value, I countered. You agreed to the terms. After you poisoned our investors against me. He stepped closer, his cologne overwhelming. You made them think I was unstable. Dangerous. You were, I said, standing my ground despite the alarm bells ringing in my head. The night you came to my apartment uninvited. I came to discuss strategy, he hissed. Instead, I found you with him. Planning how to dilute my stake. Memory clarified like a photograph coming into focus. Jack had surprised me with takeout that night. We'd been discussing vacation plans, not business strategy. Marcus had misinterpreted everything through his distorted lens. That was my boyfriend, now husband, I explained carefully. We weren't discussing you or the company. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. It doesn't matter now. You're getting exactly what you deserve. I pulled out my phone. I'm going to the police with everything I found. Marcus's smile returned, eerily calm. With what proof? I've covered my tracks well. And even if you could prove the harassment, you can't prove I sent those messages to Jack. Those came from your phone, remember? Then I'll tell Jack the truth myself. His laugh chilled me to the bone. He won't believe you. Not after what's coming next. He glanced at his watch. I should go. I have an appointment with your mother-in-law. Diane. I whispered, pieces suddenly clicking into terrible place. What does she have to do with this? Marcus's smile widened. Who do you think hired me in the first place? Diane. I repeated, my voice barely audible over the store's ambient music. The revelation knocked the air from my lungs. My mother-in-law hired you. Marcus checked his watch again, clearly enjoying my shock. She approached me about 6 months ago. Said she'd been following my career since our separation. Knew I had the technical expertise and, shall we say, motivation to help with her little problem. Her problem being me, I said flatly. Smart as always. He smiled coldly. You never were good enough for her precious son. The corporate career woman who would never give Jack the family he deserved. A memory surfaced. Diane's thinly veiled comments at our last holiday dinner about her friends becoming grandmothers. Jack and I had agreed to wait until my company's expansion stabilized before starting a family. He'd supported that decision completely, or so I thought. Jack and I make our own choices, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She has no right to interfere. A mother always has rights when it comes to her child's happiness. Marcus's tone was dismissive. She's been laying the groundwork for months. Subtly pointing out your absences, suggesting your dedication to work means a lack of dedication to Jack. The pieces were falling into place. Jack's occasional comments about his mother's concerns, the increasing frequency of her unexpected visits, her pointed questions about my late nights at the office. This isn't just about me, I realized aloud. She wants to control Jack. She always has. Marcus shrugged. Her motivations aren't my concern. I was hired to create evidence of infidelity convincing enough to end your marriage. The rest is between you and the charming Mrs. Winters. My mind raced ahead. The lunch, her supposed sighting of me with another man, she fabricated that, didn't she? Clever misdirection, he acknowledged with an appraising nod. Plant the seed of doubt, then provide evidence to water it. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. I will go to the police. I have Raj's evidence of the spyware. Circumstantial at best. His smile never wavered. And I believe you'll find Mrs. Winters has considerable influence with the local police chief. Golf buddies with her late husband, if I recall correctly. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Raj, he's got an accomplice. Another device accessing your accounts from a different location. Of course, Diane herself was monitoring everything. That's how they knew so many intimate details of our lives. I needed to act quickly. This meeting with Diane, when and where? Wouldn't you like to know? Marcus turned as if to leave. I grabbed his arm. If you're so confident in your scheme, what's the harm in telling me? He considered this, then checked his watch once more. The Rose Kai. Noon. Though I doubt it matters, she'll be finished with our business by the time you get across town. I was already moving toward the exit when he called after me. She's quite resourceful, your mother-in-law. Don't underestimate her. I didn't waste breath responding. Outside, I called Jack repeatedly as I raced to my car. Straight to voicemail every time. Next, I tried Trevor. No answer there either. Fighting panic, I sped toward the cafe on the other side of town. Traffic crawled along the main boulevard, each red light an eternity. I pounded the steering wheel in frustration, then made a split-second decision to cut through the college campus. As I navigated the narrow service roads, another text from Raj arrived. Found something. Diane's been making payments to Marcus from a trust account for months. Have documentation. Finally, something concrete. I mentally calculated the time. It was 11:47. If I could intercept them at the cafe, catch them together with witnesses present. I spotted the Rose Cafe's distinctive awning ahead and scanned for parking. There, Marcus's sleek black car pulled alongside a silver Mercedes I recognized as Diane's. I double-parked, ignoring the angry honks, and rushed toward the entrance. Through the cafe window I saw them, heads bent close together over a table in the corner. Diane's perfectly coiffed silver hair gleamed under the pendant lights as she slid what looked like an envelope across to Marcus. I raised my phone, snapping photos as evidence. Just as I pushed open the door, Diane looked up. Our eyes locked, and for a split second, naked hatred flashed across her normally composed features. Then her socialite mask slid back into place. "Emma, darling," she called, her voice dripping with false warmth. "What a lovely surprise." I approached their table, phone still recording in my hand. "Save it, Diane. I know everything." Marcus lounged back in his chair, that infuriating smirk still in place. "Join us for coffee? We were just discussing you. Planning the next phase of destroying my marriage, you mean?" I turned to Diane. "How could you do this? Your own son." "My son deserves better," she hissed, the facade cracking. "Someone who puts family first. Someone who will give him children instead of chasing promotions." "That's not your decision to make," I countered. "Jack and I had a good marriage until you orchestrated this nightmare." Diane's laugh was brittle. "Good? Please. He's been unhappy for years, too loyal to admit it. I simply provided the catalyst for what was inevitable." I felt the curious stares of other patrons. A waitress hovered nearby, clearly unsure whether to approach our tense group. "I have proof," I said, keeping my voice low. "The spyware, the payments from your trust to Marcus. All of it." A flicker of concern crossed Diane's perfect features. "No one will believe you. Certainly not Jack, not after what I've shown him." "What did you show him?" I demanded. She smiled thinly. "Let's just say I had Marcus create some very convincing photographs. Technology is remarkable these days." My stomach lurched. "You doctored photos of me? With someone who isn't you," Marcus added helpfully. "But Jack doesn't know that." Cold fury swept through me. "This ends now. I'm calling Jack and telling him everything." "He's turned off his phone," Diane said with smug certainty. "After the heartbreaking evidence I shared this morning, he doesn't want to speak with anyone, especially you." I pulled out my phone again, opening my conversation with Raj. "I'm sending all of this to the police. Harassment, stalking, fraud. You'll both face charges." Marcus's smirk finally faltered. "You're bluffing. You have nothing concrete." "Don't I?" I played the recording I'd started when entering the cafe. Their voices emerged clearly, discussing payments and doctored photographs. "And Raj has traced all the spyware back to your devices. Both of you." Diane's composure cracked completely. "You ungrateful little," she caught herself, glancing around at the now openly staring customers. "You'll regret this. Jack will never believe you over his own mother." "We'll see about that," I said, turning to leave. "Family means everything to Jack, including loyalty. How do you think he'll feel when he learns his mother orchestrated this entire nightmare?" As I walked away, I heard Marcus's low voice. "This is getting complicated, Diane. Perhaps we should." "Shut up," she snapped. "This isn't over." I stepped outside into the sunlight, a strange calm settling over me despite her threat. For the first time in weeks, I had concrete evidence and a clear enemy. The fight to reclaim my life and my marriage was just beginning, but at least now I knew exactly who I was fighting against. The calm I felt leaving the cafe evaporated the moment I reached my car. A parking enforcement officer was already writing a ticket, but that was the least of my concerns. My windshield was adorned with photographs, dozens of them secured under the wipers like macabre decorations. I snatched one free, my hand trembling as I examined it. My face, perfectly photoshopped onto another woman's body, locked in an intimate embrace with a man I'd never seen. The quality was impeccable, no obvious signs of manipulation. Several onlookers slowed their pace, glancing between me and the scandalous images fluttering in the breeze. "Is that you?" the parking officer asked, her eyes wide with morbid curiosity. I tore down the photos as quickly as possible, shoving them into my purse. "No," I said firmly. "Someone's trying to hurt me." Her skeptical expression said everything. This was just the beginning. Diane was sending a clear message about what would happen if I continued fighting back. My phone buzzed with Raj's call as I slid into the driver's seat. Emma, you need to get to your office. Now. His usually steady voice sounded alarmed. What's happening? Someone's sending those doctored photos to your entire company contact list. Your CEO just called an emergency meeting. My stomach dropped. Can you stop it? I'm trying, but they've set up an automated distribution system. It's going out in waves. I peeled away from the curb, mind racing. I need to speak to Jack first. He has to hear the truth from me before. There's more, Raj interrupted. Someone's draining your joint accounts. Large transfers are going out to offshore accounts. I'm tracking them, but you need to get to the bank immediately. That's impossible, I said, panic rising. Those accounts need dual authorization. Not anymore. The permissions were changed yesterday. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles whitened. Jack wouldn't do that. But if he believed the worst about me, if Diane had convinced him I was planning to leave, I made a split-second decision and redirected toward First National Bank. The financial manager's face fell the moment I walked in. Mrs. Winters, she said, her professional smile strained. We were just about to call you. 20 minutes and multiple verification steps later, the damage was clear. Our savings, all of it, had been transferred to accounts beyond reach. The only silver lining was the manager's confirmation that the authorization had come through Jack's credentials, not mine. I hadn't been completely erased from our financial life yet. Can you freeze everything? I asked. We already have, at Mr. Winter's request this morning. He seemed concerned about unauthorized access. Of course. Diane had convinced Jack I might try to take everything. She was systematically cutting off all my resources. I left the bank and sat in my car, forcing myself to think strategically. My professional reputation was under attack. My financial security was compromised. My marriage was in shambles. What would they target next? The answer came with horrifying clarity as my phone rang with my assistant Melissa's number. Emma. Her voice was tight with concern. Someone's here. Someone from the board. They're saying there's an emergency vote regarding your position. Something about ethical violations and company resources being used for personal vendettas. I closed my eyes, the pieces clicking together. Marcus had connections throughout the tech industry, including with several of our board members. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. Diane and Marcus were systematically dismantling my entire life. Tell them I'm on my way, I said, starting the engine. And Melissa, don't let anyone into my office or access my files. The drive to my company headquarters felt like moving through a nightmare. Upon arrival, the security guard, who had greeted me warmly every morning for 5 years, avoided eye contact as he requested my ID. In the elevator, a junior colleague who normally chatted enthusiastically pressed herself against the wall, staring at her phone with forced concentration. The photos had clearly made the rounds. Outside the boardroom, Melissa waited with red-rimmed eyes. They're all in there, she whispered. Including Hargrove. Marcus is at my board meeting? The audacity was breathtaking. He says he has evidence you've been using company resources to harass him. Something about server logs and illegal access attempts. Of course. The perfect frame job. Anything Raj had done to trace Marcus's activities would now be attributed to me, twisted into evidence of my supposed instability. I squared my shoulders. Record everything on your phone. No matter what happens in there, we need documentation. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. 8 pairs of eyes tracked my movement to the empty chair at the far end of the table. Marcus sat near the head, beside our CEO James Preston, looking for all the world like a victim seeking justice. Emma, James began, his usual warmth noticeably absent. Serious allegations have been brought to our attention. Multiple shareholders have expressed concerns about your personal conduct and its potential impact on the company. These allegations are fabricated, I said clearly, making eye contact with each board member. I'm being targeted by a sophisticated harassment campaign orchestrated by Marcus Hargrove and my mother-in-law, Diane Winters. Skeptical glances were exchanged. The oldest board member, Theodore Grantham, cleared his throat. We've received some rather disturbing photographs, Emma. Doctored, I replied firmly. I have evidence of the conspiracy, including recorded conversations and financial transactions. Marcus leaned forward, the picture of concerned professionalism. Emma, we're all worried about you. This paranoid behavior, these accusations, it's exactly why we're concerned about your judgment. I refuse to be baited. James, before we continue, I'd like to submit a forensic analysis of my devices showing unauthorized access and spyware installation. I'd also like to formally request Marcus recuse himself from this meeting due to conflict of interest. A flicker of uncertainty crossed James's face. Good, he wasn't completely convinced. This is exactly what I mean, Marcus interjected smoothly. Deflection. Accusations. Classic behaviors of someone in crisis. My phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down expecting Raj with more evidence. Instead, an unknown number displayed a live video feed of my house, with someone clearly moving through the living room. Is something wrong? James asked, noting my expression. I stood abruptly. This meeting is being held without proper notice or due process. I'm invoking my right to representation and a full investigation before any vote. And now, I need to leave immediately. If you walk out, Emma, Theodore warned, the board will have no choice but to call the police. I interrupted, turning my phone to show them the feed. Someone is breaking into my home as we speak. Would you like to explain to them how you kept me here while my property was being violated? The room erupted in confused discussions as I strode out, heart pounding. In the hallway, I forwarded the video to Raj with a simple message. Send police to my house now. As I raced back to my car, another text arrived, from Jack's number this time. I'm at the house picking up some things. We need to talk. I've heard some disturbing things from my mother. Relief washed through me, quickly followed by dread. Jack was at our house, alone and vulnerable to whatever Diane might be planning next. I raced through traffic, running red lights and cutting through parking lots. Jack was in danger whether he realized it or not. I tried calling him repeatedly, but each attempt went straight to voicemail. The 20-minute drive felt like hours. As I screeched to a halt in front of our house, I noticed two vehicles in the driveway, Jack's familiar SUV and Diane's silver Mercedes. My stomach knotted. She was already here. I called Raj. What's the status on the police? En route, but it'll be at least 10 more minutes. There was a pile-up on the highway. I'm going in, I said, grabbing the tire iron from my trunk. Emma, wait for backup. I ended the call. There wasn't time to wait. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside cautiously, listening for voices. The house felt wrong, too still yet charged with tension like the air before a thunderstorm. A lamp had been knocked over in the entryway, its shade askew. Jack. I called out, gripping the tire iron tighter. A noise from the kitchen drew me forward. I moved silently across the hardwood floors, years of yoga providing unexpected stealth. Through the kitchen doorway I could see Jack seated at our dining table, his back to me. Diane stood over him, one hand on his shoulder while the other gestured emphatically. Never wanted to show you these, sweetheart, but you needed to know the truth, she was saying, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. She wouldn't, Jack murmured, staring down at what appeared to be more doctored photographs. This can't be real. The evidence is overwhelming, Diane soothed. I know it hurts now, but you'll be better off without her manipulations. I've already spoken with Gerald about expediting the divorce proceedings. Gerald, her attorney. She'd been planning this endgame from the start. I think Jack can make his own decisions, I said, stepping into the kitchen. They both startled. Jack half rose from his chair, his expression cycling through shock, anger, and confusion. Diane recovered quickly, shifting smoothly in front of him. Emma, she said coolly. This is a private conversation between my son and me. In my house. I don't think so. I kept the tire iron partially hidden behind my leg. Jack, I need you to listen. Everything she's told you is a lie. Jack's eyes were haunted, his face pale. The photos, Emma. How can you explain the photos? They're fake. Diane hired Marcus Hargrove to destroy our marriage. They've been planning this for months. I took a step closer. Think about it, Jack. Would I really document an affair with selfies? Would I have left such obvious evidence for you to find? A flicker of doubt crossed his features, but Diane squeezed his shoulder. She's desperate, sweetheart. She's been caught and now she's making wild accusations. Your own mother wouldn't. Wouldn't what? I interrupted. Wouldn't interfere in your marriage? Wouldn't try to control your life? That's all she's ever done, Jack. That's enough. Diane's composure cracked. I won't stand here and be accused. I have proof, I said firmly, addressing Jack directly. Marcus confessed everything at the Rose Cafe. I recorded their conversation. They've been working together to separate us from the beginning. Jack looked between us, uncertainty clouding his features. Let me hear this recording. I reached for my phone, but Diane moved with startling speed. Her hand shot out, knocking my phone from my grip. It skittered across the kitchen floor and under the refrigerator. Mother! Jack exclaimed, rising fully now. She's lying, Diane hissed, a transformation coming over her features. The polished socialite mask fell away, revealing something feral beneath. She's always been lying, manipulating you away from your family. She never loved you, not like I do. The possessive intensity in her voice made Jack take a step back. What are you talking about? A new voice answered from the doorway. She's talking about her unhealthy obsession with controlling your life. Marcus leaned casually against the doorframe, watching the scene with detached amusement. Your mother's quite the performer, Jack. Had me convinced she was just a concerned parent until she started talking about how you'd finally come home where you belonged. Back under her roof, under her rules. Diane's face contorted with fury. You were paid to keep your mouth shut. I was paid to break up a marriage, Marcus corrected. Not to become an accessory to whatever this is devolving into. He gestured vaguely toward Diane. The lady's becoming a liability. You backstabbing. Diane lunged toward Marcus, who sidestepped with practiced ease. Jack grabbed his mother's arm, his expression hardening as the truth began to dawn. Mom, what have you done? Only what was necessary, she spat, wrenching her arm free. She was never good enough for you. She would have ruined your life. No children, no proper home, just ambition and selfishness. I took advantage of their confrontation to edge toward the refrigerator, dropping to my knees to retrieve my phone. The recording was our best evidence. Don't you dare, Diane warned, noticing my movement. She grabbed something from her purse. A small canister. Pepper spray. Diane, stop. Jack moved to intercept her, but Marcus grabbed him from behind. Sorry, mate. Can't have you interfering just yet. The ladies need to settle this. I scrambled backward as Diane advanced, her eyes wild with a hatred I'd never fully comprehended until this moment. You turned my son against me. You poisoned him with your independence and career ambitions. Jack made his own choices, I countered, looking for an escape route. He loves me, not as a possession but as a partner. He would have come to his senses eventually, she insisted. Realized what a proper family should be. Like yours. I challenged, remembering Jack's rare mentions of his controlling father. Is that why your husband spent more time at the office than at home? Because you suffocated him too. Her face contorted. You know nothing about my marriage. I know Jack swore he'd never repeat it, I said quietly. That's why he values my independence. That's why he supports my career. Something dangerous flashed in her eyes. She raised the pepper spray higher, finger tightening on the trigger. You've said quite enough. A sudden crash from the front of the house startled all of us. Police. Everyone remain where you are. Marcus reacted instantly, releasing Jack and bolting toward the back door. Jack tackled him with a football move I'd never seen before, sending them both crashing into the kitchen island. Diane hesitated, her focus split between escape and finishing what she'd started with me. In that moment of indecision, I lunged forward and knocked the pepper spray from her hand. It's over, Diane, I said as officers flooded the kitchen. You lost. The fight seemed to drain out of her as officers secured the scene. As they led her away, she turned to Jack one last time. Everything I did was for you, she insisted. You'll see that someday. Jack moved to my side, his arm sliding around my waist. No, Mother, he said firmly. I see everything clearly now. As the police escorted both Marcus and Diane out, I leaned against Jack, exhaustion finally overtaking me. I thought I'd lost you, I whispered. He tightened his grip. Never. But we have a lot to talk about. I nodded against his shoulder. The nightmare wasn't completely over, but for the first time in weeks I could breathe again. The masterminds behind the twisted scheme had finally been exposed, and together Jack and I would rebuild what they'd tried so desperately to destroy. The house felt eerily quiet after the chaos. Police officers had finally departed after hours of statements and evidence collection. Jack and I sat across from each other at our kitchen table, 2 mugs of untouched tea between us. The physical exhaustion was nothing compared to the emotional toll of the past few weeks. "I should have trusted you," Jack said finally, breaking the silence. His eyes, normally bright with confidence, were shadowed with regret. "I let her manipulate me just like she's done my entire life." I reached across the table, taking his hand. "She's had decades to perfect her techniques. This isn't just on you." But I believed those messages, those photos. I looked at my own wife, the person I know better than anyone, and I believed she was capable of betrayal. His voice cracked. "What does that say about me?" "It says you're human," I replied softly. "Diane and Marcus created the perfect trap. They used our schedules, our habits, our private conversations against us." Jack pulled away gently, standing to pace the kitchen. "Pie mother." He shook his head, disbelief still evident in his expression. "I knew she was controlling, but this level of obsession. Maybe we never truly knew her," I suggested. "Or maybe we just never wanted to see it." The district attorney had already outlined the charges: criminal harassment, stalking, invasion of privacy, identity theft, and a host of digital crimes. Both Diane and Marcus were facing significant jail time, especially after the forensic evidence from our devices confirmed everything. "The guest room is made up," I said after another lengthy silence. "If you'd prefer to stay there for now." Jack stopped pacing, turning to face me with a pained expression. "Is that what you want?" "I want what we had before," I admitted. "But I know we can't just erase the past few weeks. You believed I betrayed you, and that hurt deeply. And I abandoned you when you needed me most," he countered, his voice heavy with remorse. "Left you to face them alone." We had circled this conversation since the police left, both of us wounded, both wanting to heal but unsure of the path forward. Jack came back to the table, sitting closer this time. "I don't want the guest room, but I'll respect whatever space you need." "What I need," I said slowly, "is to understand how we rebuild from here. How we make sure nothing like this ever happens again." "We start with complete transparency," he suggested. "No more secrets, no more assuming we know what the other is thinking." I nodded, feeling the first tentative steps toward reconciliation. "And boundaries. Clear, unbreakable boundaries with your mother." "She won't be a factor for years," Jack said firmly. "Not after the sentencing. But eventually she'll be released," I reminded him. "And she'll still be your mother." He reached for my hand again, his grip firmer this time. "When that day comes, we'll be ready. Together." The night stretched long as we talked through everything. Not just the immediate trauma, but the small fractures that had existed before, the tiny spaces where doubt could take root. By dawn we had fallen asleep on the couch, physically and emotionally drained but somehow lighter. The weeks that followed brought challenges we hadn't anticipated. The professional damage had been extensive. Though the board eventually rescinded their emergency action, the whispers and sideways glances continued. The doctored photos had circulated widely before being debunked. "It doesn't matter what they think," Jack insisted one evening as I recounted another awkward elevator ride with colleagues. "It shouldn't," I agreed, "but reputation matters in business." "Then we rebuild that too," he said simply. "One day at a time." He was right. Gradually, as the full story emerged through the legal proceedings, support replaced suspicion. Clients who had distanced themselves cautiously returned. The financial damage took longer to repair. Lawyers, digital security consultants, and therapy weren't cheap, but we approached each challenge as a team. The most unexpected support came from Jack's father, Richard, who had remained distant since his divorce from Diane 15 years earlier. He appeared on our doorstep one Sunday morning, 3 months after Diane's arrest. "I should have warned you," he said without preamble when Jack opened the door. "I knew who she was, what she was capable of, but I wanted to believe she'd changed." That lunch with Richard revealed patterns we hadn't recognized. The isolation tactics, the subtle manipulations, the rewriting of history. For Jack, it was both validation and heartbreak to hear his childhood reframed through his father's perspective. "I don't want to become him," Jack confessed that night after Richard had gone. "Running away when things got difficult." "You won't," I assured him. "Because you're aware of the pattern. That's half the battle." Our therapy sessions, both individual and as a couple, became the foundation of our rebuilding. Dr. Levine helped us navigate the complex emotions. Jack's guilt over his initial distrust, my lingering fear of vulnerability, our shared anxiety about future manipulation. Trust isn't rebuilt through grand gestures, she reminded us often. It's the accumulation of small moments of reliability. 6 months after the arrests, we faced another challenge. Diane, awaiting trial, requested a meeting with Jack. The decision tormented him for days. "I don't owe her anything," he said one night, staring at the ceiling above our bed. "No," I agreed. "You don't. But if I don't go, I'll always wonder what she wanted to say." I rolled onto my side, studying his profile in the dim light. "Whatever you decide, I support you. But remember what Dr. Levine said about maintaining boundaries." Jack opted to meet her with strict conditions and his lawyer present. He returned quieter than I'd seen him in weeks. "She wanted forgiveness," he said finally as we walked along the beach that evening, the sunset painting the water in hues of gold and crimson. "Not because she regrets what she did, but because she still believes she was right." "And what did you tell her?" I asked gently. "That forgiveness might come someday but not today. And that she would never again dictate the terms of our relationship." His voice was steady, resolved. "I told her that you and I are a unit, that any relationship with me includes respect for you." I squeezed his hand, wordlessly acknowledging the strength it had taken. "It's strange," he continued. "I'm free. Like I've been carrying her expectations my entire life and finally set them down." 1 year to the day after Diane's arrest, we renewed our vows in a small ceremony by the ocean. Not because our marriage had broken, but because we had forged something stronger from the attempt to break it. "I choose you," Jack said, his voice carrying across the waves, with clear eyes and full awareness of all that we've overcome. "And I choose you," I replied, "not despite our scars but because of them. They're proof of what we can survive together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized that what Diane had intended as our destruction had instead become our reconstruction. We were no longer the same couple she had targeted. We were stronger, more vigilant, more deeply connected. In trying to tear us apart, she had inadvertently bound us together in ways that would withstand any future storms.